Yeah. And, they told me, they said, Masvidal said he's going to come up on site. And I said, well, where's Masvidal sitting? He said, well, he's 6 or 7 rows away from Masvidal. I said, well, if the guy has a ticket, let him sit in his seat and
find out exactly what's inside that folder, he snarled, and get his people on the phone now. Because after everything I said up there tonight, after everything this company has built, if Islam signed a deal without telling us, he trailed off, shaking with a barely controlled fury. I am going to rip this entire thing to shreds. The phones were ringing off the hook, teams were scrambling, and the chaos was only growing. And right in the middle of it all was Dana White, the president of the UFC, getting ready for the one showdown that could completely change Islam Makhachev's career, redefine what it means to be a champion, and decide if the most dominant fighter in the sport had just thrown away everything the UFC had built for him. The storm was officially here, and Dana, who is famous for his take-no-prisoners style, was not about to back down. We're all just going to have to wait and see how this story plays out over the next few months. Is there any chance for them to fix this, or is this really the end of an era? Thanks for tuning in, and make sure to check out the other videos on your screen. So why is everyone so angry at him? The truth is, I have no clue. I had no idea I was supposed to be. And let me tell you, we are absolutely not mad at him. That was Dana White's official response when the news broke that Islam Makhachev had just inked a brand new deal completely outside of the UFC. But here's the thing. According to source after source, that cool, calm reaction is a total fabrication. Behind closed doors, we're hearing that Dana is absolutely losing his mind. And it's not just that Islam is walking away, it's about the people he's getting into business with. Let's get into what really happened. It all started to fall apart on one single night. The feeling inside Madison Square Garden right after UFC 322 was exactly what you'd expect. It had that perfectly polished energy of another massive success. You had the roar of a completely sold-out crowd, and the sight of this incredibly precise, disciplined machine of a company that just pulled off another show that shattered records. So Dana White walks up to the podium looking as confident as a man who is used to breaking both numbers and people's expectations. The press room was electric, cameras were flashing everywhere, and before a single journalist could even get a question out, Dana established the mood with his typical, undeniable authority. He announced that the attendance for the night was 2,664, a complete sellout with a gate of $13.6 million. And he didn't stop there. He immediately put it into historical perspective, making sure everyone in that room knew exactly who runs the most famous arena in the world. He pointed out that this was the 3rd highest gate ever at MSG, and that the UFC currently holds the 1st through 5th, 7th, 9th, and 10th spots of all time, adding that within a couple more years, they'd have all 10. This was the kind of opening that was supposed to kick off a totally routine evening, another packed house, insane numbers, and a main event that was pure dominance. On the surface, the entire night seemed stable, controlled, almost predictable. But right as Dana was speaking, a tiny alert popped up without a sound in the UFC's internal admin system, the very one they use to manage fighter schedules, contractual duties, and all crucial paperwork. It was an automated red flag appearing right next to Islam Makhachev's name. There was no explanation, zero details, just a simple tag that read, External Commercial Contract, not UFC authorized. Now an alert like that only shows up in the most extreme situations, and it's intended for one set of eyes only. Dana White. The security detail, however, didn't hand it to him right away. They held back. They are trained to hold back unless the issue involves a direct and immediate legal breach. This situation was murky. It was obviously serious enough to be flagged, but it was also so vague that interrupting the president in the middle of a press conference could set off a storm of unnecessary chaos. So that piece of paper just sat in a supervisor's hand, while Dana continued, completely oblivious to the bomb that was about to go off. The reporters, as you'd expect, started by asking about the main event, focusing on Islam Makhachev's show. The champion had just put on a clinic, a suffocating and perfect game plan. It was the kind of win that leaves no room for doubt, even if it didn't exactly set the world on fire with excitement. Dana even admitted that the fight lacked a certain spark, but the praise he gave next was powerful. And looking back, it's absolutely central to the drama that was unfolding backstage. He said it wasn't the most thrilling title fight you're ever going to witness, but almost in the same breath, he followed it up with something far more important, saying, "But let me tell you what, that was complete dominance. This guy's headed toward GOAT status." Inside the UFC's world, that's not just a simple compliment. When GOAT talk starts, it's a signal that a fighter's power and influence are growing far beyond that of a typical champion. It means the UFC has to start being very careful, very strategic, and on high alert. And get this, those words were coming out of Dana's mouth at the exact same moment that the UFC operations crew was staring at a system alert connected directly to Islam's name. They understood precisely what GOAT talk implied for contracting negotiations, and just how catastrophic an unapproved outside deal could actually be. For now though, the press conference went on as planned. Journalists asked about who was next, and Dana started laying out what he saw as the most profitable options. There were several huge names calling for a shot at Islam, and every single one represented a massive payday. He mentioned that Usman, Shavkat, and Ilia Topuria were all demanding a fight, which gave the promotion a ton of amazing choices. And then came the moment that in retrospect, feels like a scene straight out of a movie. A reporter asked if Islam had even talked to Dana since his victory. Dana's response was quick and casual, but it lined up perfectly with the crisis that was silently brewing. He asked, "Has he been through here yet, Islam?" No. Dana didn't think anything of it. It's common for fighters to skip the press room. But for the UFC operations team listening from the hallway, their stomachs just dropped. Because if Islam really had signed some sort of outside deal, he absolutely should have spoken with Dana, or the internal team first. His absence suddenly had a whole new, much darker meaning. Dana kept on answering questions. When someone brought up the highly anticipated White House card, he made it clear that Islam was definitely in the running to be a potential headliner. When asked directly if Islam could end up on that card, he confirmed it was a definite possibility. While the public heard this as high praise, behind the scenes at the UFC, this was about to become the core of the problem. A fighter who is about to headline the most ambitious event in the company's entire history cannot have any external business deals without the UFC's explicit approval. And Dana still had no idea. He moved on talking about Valentina Shevchenko, Jorge Masvidal, and a handful of other fighters. He even talked about the chaotic situation involving Bo Nickal with his usual brutal honesty. He then pivoted back to Islam's incredible winning streak, which now tied Anderson Silva's record of 16 straight victories. He even told the story of Khabib's emotional reaction, saying Khabib ran up to him, screaming and freaking out, and hit him over the head with both belts. All of these details were crucial. Islam was becoming more valuable by the minute, not just as a fighter, but as a core asset for the UFC's entire promotional future. All the while, that internal alert was still sitting there, unread. As the presser continued, Dana handled the messy situation with Dillon Danis. He explained they told him Masvidal was coming, and said if the guy has a ticket, he can sit in his seat. Then, with absolute finality, he stated that you will never see Dillon Danis at a UFC event ever again. These quotes are a perfect example of how Dana reacts when he feels like he's been blindsided or disrespected, and the UFC staff in the hallway, holding that alert, knew exactly what his reaction would be to this kind of surprise. He kept answering questions about rankings, pound-for-pound status, and the UFC's plans for global expansion, saying again with total confidence that Jon Jones is still the GOAT, whether people like it or not. He talked about the amazing crowd energy in France, Dana's target locations, and the roster's depth, showing complete control over the promotion's future. It was only after the very last question that Dana finally walked away from the cameras and went backstage, where the operations supervisor at last came up to him holding a printed sheet with the alert. Dana grabbed it, his eyes went to the headline, and he just froze. It said, "Unauthorized external contract registered, Makhachev, Islam." The fallout was instant, and it was catastrophic. In the UFC's universe, a champion is not allowed to have independent business deals that haven't been reviewed, approved, and integrated into the company's strict regulatory system. And here was Islam, the undefeated, dominant champion on a GOAT trajectory who apparently hadn't told a single soul. No talk, no approval, no heads up, nothing. Dana just stared at the page, reading it over and over, as a quiet anger began to boil just under the surface. Everyone around him knew that look. It was the exact same expression he had right before he delivered his famous ultimatum during the Dana incident. But this time, the situation was 1,000 times more serious. Islam Makhachev wasn't just some fighter. He was the foundation for the UFC's most ambitious plans for the future. And all of those plans were now at risk. Dana took a slow breath, lowered the paper, and asked the only question that actually mattered: what contract? No one had an answer. The eruption was coming. The moment Dana White uttered the words, "What contract?" the entire vibe in the hallway changed. The UFC's backstage area is basically a war room, pretending to be a sports arena, with assistants talking into headsets, security guards directing traffic, and executives moving through a labyrinth of secure doors. But all of it came to a dead stop the second Dana was holding that sheet of paper. The air got thick around him, and even the people who had no idea what was going on could feel the tension start to crackle in the air. Dana wasn't yelling. He wasn't storming around or swearing, not yet. He just stood there, completely still, looking over the alert as if reading it one more time might somehow change what it said. It did. The supervisor who gave him the message, a guy who had survived 6 different major scandals and had worked for Dana for almost a decade, cleared his throat and said the one thing no one on staff ever wants to say: "We might have a situation." Dana's eyes narrowed. His voice became that quiet whisper he uses just before he blows the entire roof off a place. "Who flagged it?" The supervisor just pointed down the hall towards the operations center. Without saying another word, Dana started walking, and he was walking fast. People literally jumped out of his way to avoid getting bulldozed. His staff trailed behind, scrambling just to keep pace, nobody daring to ask a single question. They all knew better. Inside the ops office, a group of analysts were hunched over their monitors, which were filled with fighter profiles, contract details, medical histories, and compliance paperwork. When Dana walked in, they all snapped to attention. "Pull up Makhachev," he ordered. In just a few seconds, Islam's entire file was on the main screen. All his recent activity looked completely normal: fight agreement, medical check, weigh-in, commission paperwork, everything that was supposed to be there. But then, at the very bottom, lit up in yellow, was that same anomaly: external commercial contract, pending registration, not UFC authorized. Dana leaned in close. "Click on it." The analyst just shook his head. "We can't. There's no document attached yet. Just the trigger flag." That just made him more furious. "So what you're telling me is that our system gets an external contract alert for a world champion on the biggest night of the year, and you have no idea what the hell it is?" The analyst started to stammer, explaining that it meant a contract exists, but the source hadn't sent the details up the chain yet, and that it usually happens when another organization files paperwork before telling the UFC. "Partner organization," Dana shot back. "Who the hell is partnering with our champion without us?" The room went silent, the kind of silence that makes your stomach turn. One of the operations heads stepped forward very carefully. Technically it could be anything: a branding deal, a regional sponsor, an outside promotion, a media deal. Dana cut him right off. "He doesn't sign a damn thing without it going through us. Nothing. He knows it. His team knows it. Are you trying to tell me Islam signed a contract tonight in the middle of a title defense?" Nobody in the room answered. They didn't need to. Dana turned his back, breathing heavily, trying to control the surge of adrenaline and anger. His thoughts immediately went back to the press conference. Every single quote, every question, every time he mentioned Islam in the GOAT conversation. He had been the one to push Islam into that spotlight, essentially jacking up his public value and solidifying his path. He had talked about the White House card, about Islam possibly headlining the biggest event in the company's history. And during all of that, Islam had never once come backstage. He didn't check in. He didn't even pass through the press area. He had vanished after the fight, supposedly to go celebrate. But now, that disappearance looked completely calculated. The pieces were starting to form a picture Dana really did not want to see. He turned back to the analysts. "When was the alert timestamped?" One of them scrolled through the log. "It came in during the press conference. Right around the time you brought up Islam in the White House show." That timing was no accident. Dana's eyes got sharp, and nobody has contacted him. The room exchanged nervous looks. The supervisor spoke up quietly. He left the building immediately after his medical clearance. He didn't talk to the media, didn't go to the VIP area, didn't check in with anybody. He just got into a private car with his team and left. Dana's face hardened. A champion leaving on the biggest night of his career without even a nod to the organization was weird enough. But leaving just minutes before a contract alert goes off, that was something else entirely. He blew air out through his nose, trying to keep himself from completely losing it. "Get Hunter on the phone," he said. "Get PR and get me legal. Now." Everyone scattered instantly. As they were making calls, Dana's mind replayed the Thier night. Little pieces started to come back to him. The statistical praise, the comments about Islam's dominance, his potential pound-for-pound spot, the story about Khabib hitting him with the belts. All the expectations for Islam's future. The buzz around legacy fights with Usman or Shavkat or Ilya. And especially the building hype for a massive White House event. All of it had pushed Islam's leverage to a level that fighters usually only get to at the very end of their careers, not in the middle of a title reign. And a fighter with that much leverage becomes a prime target for outside groups, trying to attach themselves to his value. But here's the thing, Islam wasn't known for being reckless or impulsive. He wasn't the kind of guy to just sign a deal behind the UFC's back. So if he really did sign something, it had to be a massive offer, something way bigger than anything the UFC could have imagined. Big enough that his team thought they could get away with hiding it. At least for a little while. That thought lit a fire of pure rage deep in Dana's gut. Hunter Campbell showed up in under 2 minutes, still in his post-event suit, and holding files from some other issue he was handling. "What's going on?" he asked. Dana just handed him the paper. Hunter read it once, and then read it again, much slower this time. Dana just nodded. "Exactly." Hunter moved closer to the monitor. "Do we know what kind of external contract it is? Media? Endorsement? Broadcast?" The analyst repeated, "No details. Only that some entity filed a registration for a signed agreement that involves Islam, and the system flagged it because he's an active champion." Hunter started rubbing his chin. Whoever filed this might not have known it, automatically cross-references fighters with champion status restrictions. Dana slammed his fist on the desk. Or they knew, and they just didn't give a damn. Hunter didn't even try to argue. The two of them had been through a million crises together. John Jones' suspensions, Conor McGregor's antics, the Khabib bus attack, entire fight cards collapsing overnight. But this felt different. It had a very specific kind of danger. Champions are locked into ironclad contracts. An unauthorized deal, depending on what it was, could cancel fights, torpedo events, or completely block Islam from headlining that White House card. Dana started pacing. "Islam is a cornerstone for our next 2 years. We're planning Spain. We're locking in the White House. We're finalizing the Paramount deal. We can't have a champion signing secret deals behind our backs. No, absolutely not." And then the worst possible thought hit him. Hunter asked, "Or is it another promotion?" Dana froze. The entire room stopped breathing. Hunter kept going, his voice calm but heavy. "We've seen certain companies get really aggressive when a fighter's value shoots up. Even offers that don't go anywhere can trigger these registration flags if they file the paperwork ahead of time, thinking they're going to get the deal done." Dana said slowly, "You're talking about them leaking a contract filing before Islam even gets out of the arena." Hunter nodded. "To create pressure, to build leverage, or to publicly claim him before he has a chance to say anything." That idea just exploded in Dana's mind. A pre-filed contract, a public relations trap, someone trying to make it seem like Islam had already signed with them, even if he hadn't. A move designed to create immediate headlines, panic, and total chaos. Dana's voice dropped to a dangerously low level. "Find out who filed." The operations crew got to work, digging through signature metadata, registry info, affiliate partners, regional codes, anything that could point to the source. While they were searching, an assistant ran into the room holding up a phone. "Dana, you have to see this." Dana took the phone. On the screen was a social media post that was already starting to spread through the MMA community. It wasn't viral yet, but it was only a matter of minutes. The post was claiming that Islam Makhachev had just entered into a historic external partnership with a major organization outside of the UFC. No specifics, no proof, but just enough to start a firestorm of speculation, and enough to make the situation 1,000 times worse. Hunter leaned over his shoulder. "Who posted it?" Dana zoomed in. It was a journalist known for leaking deals early. Sometimes he was right, and sometimes it was a complete disaster. The caption said, "Breaking. Islam Makhachev has reportedly signed a new contract outside the UFC. Details coming soon." Dana's face turned to stone. The problem had just gone from a weird internal alert to a public wildfire, and Islam was completely unreachable. Hunter looked at him. "We need to get out in front of this now." Dana just shook his head. "Not until we know what the hell is really going on." He turned to face the room, his voice rising, sharp and cutting through the noise like a razor. "Find Islam. Find his team. Find out who filed this contract. I don't care what time it is or where they are. Call every single manager, every liaison, every contact we have. I want answers before this whole thing blows up." He stopped, breathing hard, his anger dangerously close to boiling over. "And when we get the truth," Dana growled, "someone's getting lit up." Everyone scattered. Phones started ringing. Keyboards started clacking. Staff were sprinting down the hallways. The entire UFC machine was now in full-blown emergency mode. And right in the middle of it all was the one man who needed answers more than anyone. Dana White, just standing there, waiting, seething, and knowing that the very next phone call could completely rewrite the future of the UFC's most dominant champion. The explosion hadn't come just yet, but it was on its way. The deeper the UFC's operations team went, the more the situation started to transform from a confusing system alert into a legitimate, full-blown crisis. Phones were ringing off the hook in every direction as compliance officers ran back and forth between departments. Every few minutes, someone would rush in with another small piece of information, none of it enough to solve the entire puzzle. But each new detail added more weight to a problem that should never have happened. Hunter Campbell was pacing back and forth near the operations table as analysts dug through the metadata. Meanwhile, Dana was just standing next to the main monitor, staring at Islam's fighter profile as if the screen itself was hiding information from him. Those quotes from his earlier press conference were echoing in his head like ghosts, almost taunting the sense of control he thought he had over his champion's career. When he said, "This guy's headed toward GOAT talk," it wasn't just hype. It was a calculated move. That kind of talk raises a fighter's commercial value, which is precisely why the UFC locks down its champions with suffocatingly exclusive contracts. A champion is forbidden from negotiating on their own with any company that might try to use their image, likeness, or schedule. And yet, here they were, dealing with a mystery contract that had somehow been filed. As the team was cross-referencing all the regional business registries, one of the analysts suddenly froze. "Dana, we've got something." Dana was at the monitor in a second. The analyst pointed to a string of code that identified the region of origin. The filing had pinged through a European commercial registry, one that's often used by foreign promotions and event organizers. Hunter leaned in closer. "Which one?" The analyst paused. He couldn't confirm the specific company yet, but the registry was used by several organizations that had expressed interest in Islam in the past. Dana didn't even blink. "Say it." The analyst took a breath. "It could be one of the Middle Eastern mega-event group." The room went completely silent, because that meant this was something much bigger than a standard sponsorship deal. Those Middle Eastern event organizers are known for bankrolling combat sports superfights with budgets that the UFC doesn't even try to compete with. We're not talking about small-time brands or training gyms here. These are organizations with the kind of financial power to make offers that change people's lives, offers that could easily tempt a world champion to bend, or maybe even break, UFC rules. Dana clenched his jaw. "They wouldn't dare file something without speaking to us first." Hunter replied calmly, but with a seriousness that made the whole room feel darker. If Islam's team was talking to them in private, and if they thought their deal was somehow protected from UFC interference, it felt like a gut punch to Dana. He replayed another moment in his mind, one that suddenly felt way more important than it did during the press conference. Has he been through here yet, Islam? No. At the time, it meant nothing. Fighters skip media all the time. Fighters disappear after a win. But now, his absence felt planned, deliberate, coordinated, and even worse, perfectly timed. Hunter turned to the room. "We need to speak with his manager." An assistant called out, "We've already tried. His phone is off. His team says he left with Islam right after the fight and hasn't been in touch." Dana's temper finally broke. "What do you mean he hasn't responded? He manages a reigning world champion. His phone is not going to be off tonight." Nobody said a word. Then another analyst waved them over. "Sir, we tracked the filing's timestamp through the foreign commercial server. It lines up with the exact moment that reporter tweeted the story." He pointed to the post, which was still open on a side monitor. This wasn't just a confirmation, it was a power play. It was leverage. It was ammunition that had been fired before the UFC even had a chance to see the gun. This wasn't a leak. This was a calculated strategy. At that very moment, a staff member ran in holding a tablet. "Dana, the media is asking for an official statement. This thing is spreading." Dana turned around slowly. His voice was low, sharp, and laser-focused. We're not saying a damn thing, but the speculation. I don't care about speculation. Dana cut him off. We don't say anything until we know what's true. If this is real, we deal with it behind closed doors. If it's not real, we're not going to give any attention to some BS stunt. Hunter nodded his head. I agree. No comment until we can identify the source of the filing. They kept digging, and every new piece of information just stretched the tension even further. As the minutes ticked by, the stakes got higher and higher. The White House event, global expansion, the ESPN negotiations, the Paramount deal, the UFC's absolute dominance over international combat sports. All of it relied on keeping total control over its champion. And that's when another realization hit Dana like a bolt of lightning. A 16-fight win streak, tying Anderson Silva. That level of dominance turns a fighter into a global asset, not just valuable to the UFC, but valuable on an international scale. Boxing promoters, mega arena owners, foreign governments, looking for sports showcases, any one of them could be dangling something massive. And if Islam even considered one of those offers for just a second, it explained everything. More team members started pouring into the room, legal, compliance, PR, medical staff. The office turned into a hive of chaotic activity. Dana just stood in the middle of it all, not moving, taking everything in, connecting the dots, and just waiting for the next piece of information that could change the course of the entire night. Another staffer walked up to Hunter. Sir, we found the originating office. The contract was filed through a European intermediary that's known for representing international event venues. Dana's eyes were burning with the fury of a man who had just been completely blindsided on the most important night of the year.